this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
With no fees or minimums on checking accounts, it's no wonder that Capital One Bank Guy is so passionate about banking with Capital One. If he were here, he wouldn't just tell you about no fees or minimums. He'd also tell you about how Capital One cafes are open 7 days a week to assist with your banking needs. Yep, even on weekends. It's pretty much all he talks about, in a good way. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bankguy. Capital One N.A., member FDIC. Hey, and welcome to the Short Stuff. I'm Josh, and there's Chuck. Jerry's sitting in for Dave, and so this is Short Stuff, the, how do you say this again, edition.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's spelled Y-A-K-H, as most words are. C-H-A-A-L. I'm going to say Yakhchāls.
I'm going with the straight-ahead Yakhchāls.
All right.
Okay? So you say it your way throughout, I'll say it my way, and I'm sure I'll inevitably, unconsciously start saying it your way.
We'll see. But what we're talking about is the promise from our refrigeration episode, a little bit more on these ancient refrigerators or cooling systems.
Yeah.
They were found across ancient Persia, at least as old as 400 BC. This is modern-day Iran. And these are places where, believe it or not, the climate enables freezing of ice when you would not think you should be able to freeze ice.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And apparently still today in Iran, Afghanistan, and Tajikistan, yeah, I said it right the first time, they call their refrigerators Yakhchāls, which is how I would say it if I were in Iran. But that's the name for their fridge, which means that at some point, someone in Iran has gone into a store and said, "You got a smeg Yakhchāl?"
Yeah. Exactly. And these have been the fascination of everyone from engineers to historians to physicists over the years, because they're just so kind of confusing in how they actually work. And I'm still not entirely sure how it works. It seems to be a little magic involved. One thing I know goes a long way toward keeping this ice. And we got to say, some of this ice is mined from the mountains and brought down and preserved. Some is made on site. We'll get to that. But one big factor is the insulation of the structure itself, which is made from a mortar called sarouge.
Is that how you're saying it?
Yeah, sand, clay, egg whites, lime, goat hair, and ash.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a mixture.
Some of these were several meters thick. Some of these Yakhchāls were. But there was a study, we got some of this information from the engineering firm Max Fordham, and they did an analysis from 2018 of Yakhchāls and just how effective they might have been. And they found that the walls of a Yakhchāl had the same insulative properties as a wall of concrete, 3 inches thick, surrounded by a 1 foot thick wrapping of styrofoam insulation. That's how effective these things were.
Sand, clay, egg whites, lime, and goat hair and ash.
I was going to say the secret is egg whites, but
who knows?
I don't know. You throw goat hair in there and
yeah.
Who knows what the secret? I think the secret is the whole thing together, the whole sarouge mixture.
Yeah, probably so. So I mentioned that sometimes the ice was brought in from the mountains and kept there throughout the year, but usually what would happen is they would make ice. They would bring in water. They would divert water from an aqueduct through these underground water channels called qanats, and they would channel them to the north side of this wall. It's another thing we haven't mentioned yet is they have these very, very high walls that act as shade for these channels to keep the wind off of it because stuff isn't going to freeze as fast if it's moving. So to keep the water still and to keep it cooler away from that sun.
Yeah, and so the channel has a little diversion into a trench or a pit or a very shallow, rectangular pond usually. And they'll divert water in there to fill it up, and then they let it freeze overnight. Over the course of a few nights, it'll continue to freeze and freeze and freeze in layers. And what they're taking advantage of, when it snows and then the temperatures heat up and all the snow melts, but there's a little pile of snow in a shaded corner of your yard that never gets direct sunlight.
Yeah.
And it just takes forever to melt.
That was
They're
our
taking
yard.
advantage of the same thing. They're building that big old wall to keep it shaded and to just let this ice grow and grow and grow. And then once it reaches, I think, 50 centimeters, which is like about a half a meter thick, then they'll cut it into blocks and they put it in the yakhchāl and they store it through summer. Like, this stuff will stay frozen for an entire summer. So in that sense, these yakhchāls are built to store cold throughout the course of a year. Even when the summer comes around, it's still cold.
Yeah. Another way that helps us out is that dome shape. It's not domed because they like domes, even though domes are nice. It's conical because that optimizes what's called the solar chimney effect. That's when you create a convection current, letting that heat go up, 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 and out through these openings at the top and bringing in that cool air from the bottom.
They also have wind catchers that they call bejirs, and they actually take wind and direct it downward into the yakhchāl dome. And so the air that hits it is cooled by that ice, and the air that's not cooled by it or cooled enough, like you said, that chimney effect takes it up along the curved sides toward the hole in the top, and it says, "See you later. Don't come back."
That's right. And that feels like a good time for a break, and we'll come back and talk about what the heck they're doing with all this ice right after this. Everyone knows winter is the real mess maker. You don't need WeatherTech floor liners for summer unless you hit the beach and half the beach ends up back in your car, or the campsite dirt ends up in your trunk. Then you'd want a cargo liner, or a road trip goes sideways, lemonade spills, ketchup goes rogue, ice cream drips. Yeah, you'd be pretty happy about those WeatherTech seat protectors. So just to be clear, as the mud you're inevitably going to step in this summer, you don't need WeatherTech unless you plan on doing summer. Visit WeatherTech.com today. Hey everybody, here's a fact for you. In the United States, there is a break-in every 26 seconds, and that means that somewhere right now, an intruder is getting closer. And the problem with most security systems is that they only alert you after the break-in has started, and that's too late.
Well, that's what makes SimpliSafe different. They use alerts. SimpliSafe's US-based live agents, they identify threats on your property and help deter them before they actually break in. So the intruder never gets into your house. The crime is stopped before it even starts.
That's right. And another great thing about SimpliSafe is they have no long-term contracts. They give you peace of mind and great value with their monitoring deterrence plans because they just start at about $1 a day.
Yeah, SimpliSafe sent us a setup years back, and I still use mine every day.
Yeah, and apparently setup, you can do it by yourself in under 30 minutes, so it's a really good value and it doesn't take long.
So if you want to experience the SimpliSafe peace of mind, you can take advantage of the SimpliSafe discount offered to Stuff You Should Know listeners. Right now, you can get 50% off your new system by visiting simplisafe.com/stuff. That's half off at simplisafe.com/stuff. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
All right, so they're making ice, they're preserving ice. What are they doing with all of this ice? One of the things they're doing is using it as a refrigerator. They'll store food in there that they don't want to go bad and just using it as a cold house. They will also just use the ice to eat in a treat. They have something called faluda over there. It's a Persian traditional dessert. Has thin vermicelli noodles made from cornstarch. And then you mix that up with a little semi-frozen syrup of sugar and rose water, and then serve it up with a little lime juice and maybe some ground pistachios. And it's like a little Persian icy.
That has to be better than it sounds, don't you think?
Oh, I think it sounds great.
I think the pistachios are what are throwing me off.
Oh, yeah? You don't like pistachios, or?
I do like pistachios. It just, they don't seem to go with the rest of the ingredients. But like I said, I'm sure it's delicious. I mean, it's a traditional Persian dessert. It's got staying power. So
yeah,
who am I to question faluda?
Exactly. I bet it's delicious.
One of the cool things about this is that yakhchāls, and there's some still around. I think there's one in Kerman, Iran. that's about the size of a 5-story building. So you would think, of course, obviously this was reserved for royalty. You would be dead wrong, because not only were yakhchāls open and available to the public, there were some that people just built for their houses that were of private use as well.
Yeah, for sure. They would make those delicious faluda. They would make sherbets and preserve them.
Isn't that nuts?
Fruit and ice, and they would put them on a donkey and go sell them at market and stuff like that. They would sell ice directly from those places sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things they're also taking advantage of is the greenhouse effect. The Earth is going to stay fairly warm at night because of the greenhouse effect, trapping those gases in the atmosphere. But if it's low humidity and if it's a really clear night, that effect is going to be weaker, and that heat can dissipate and disappear more readily. And so that's when they discovered, like, hey, we can make these little thin layers of ice and kind of build, day by day, night by night on these clear, low humidity nights, eventually to get, some pretty significant ice.
Mm-hmm. And once they figured that out, someone said, go get the donkey.
Yeah, exactly.
It's time to sell some sherbet.
And harvest some goat hair.
One other thing I saw in that Max Fordham analysis, they figured out that they could make about what would be equivalent to 3 million ice cubes a season.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a lot, but they were like, you'd think it'd be more. And I was like, it seems pretty good to me, especially if in 400 BC,
Yeah, depends on how big those cubes were. Were they big, fancy cocktail cubes? That's a lot more ice than a ice nugget.
That's right. You're absolutely right. I expect that they're probably all donkey head size. So 3 million donkey head size ice cubes.
That's big.
Think about the poor donkey that had to cart those around.
I know. No fun.
You got anything else?
Yeah, I mean, these went away, obviously, because of modern refrigeration came on the scene. And also, one thing that was happening was they were making this ice kind of out in the open, and a lot of it would get contaminated with dust, and it wasn't like the healthiest ice in the world. And so that combined with modern refrigeration coming along, they're like, maybe we should just not have these much anymore. But like you mentioned, there is one still around, at least, in Kerman. And there are groups there that are trying to preserve this way of life and at least keep it, not like a cheap refrigerating method, but like, hey, we can't lose our culture. And so let's work to take some of these old ones and restore them at least, even if only for like museum and touring purposes.
For sure. But also there's a lot to learn from them, especially when we're trying to advance like passive cooling and other things that require less energy to cool things down. Yakhchāls are something to turn to and say, how do we do this? And someone says, go get the goat hair.
Yeah, that's right. Get some egg whites too. No one likes those.
Right. What do we do with all these yolks?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for short stuff, right, Chuck?
I think so.
Well, that means short stuff is that.
Stuff You Should Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.